Years in the Tulare County Sheriff's Office and is currently president of the California State Sheriff's Association. The video features Boudreaux and other state and local law enforcement when Harris was in the Central Valley.
So for me in law enforcement to see my face and image along with my law enforcement counterparts being represented as standing alongside Kamala Harris was truly disheartening. We do not support Kamala Harris. She has a history of not supporting law enforcement. And I just wanted to come out and say that for me in Tulare County, the sheriff of Tulare County, looking out for victims, looking for someone who's going to support criminal justice and law enforcement, that is best represented by Donald Trump and not Kamala Harris.
Donald Trump is calling out Kamala Harris for her new no tax on tips policy.
And all of a sudden she's making a speech saying there will be no tax on tips. I said that months ago. And by the way, they had just the opposite. You know, they had not only tax on tips, but they hired 88,000 IRS agents, and many of them were assigned to go get waitresses and caddies and all of this on tips. And all of a sudden, for politics, she says, you know, she comes out with what I said, which I think is terrible.
Tennessee Republican Senator Bill Hagerty calls this a typical Democrat move.
Plagiarism is not new to Joe Biden, you know that. But to see both Biden and Harris plagiarize President Trump's idea, because it's popular, because it's working, and that's why they're trying to copy it.
2 illegal aliens were arrested for a knife-point rape in Coney Island, New York, including one who was released from jail less than 2 months after sexually assaulting a different woman at a city-funded shelter. Another illegal who was put in jail for beating up a New York City cop was given a $50,000 bond, which was promptly paid by the Good Shepherd Lutheran Church. He was released and later went on to commit more violent crimes. Former acting ICE Director Tom Homan puts the blame on these charitable organizations.
Oh, absolutely. Catholic Social Services, Lutheran Church, all these NGOs are getting billions, with a B, billions of dollars from the federal government for the care and feeding of people who are not supposed to even be here. And meanwhile, we got homeless vets living under bridges. This did not happen under the Trump administration. And if he becomes president again, I can promise you that will stop on day one. We will no longer be doing that.
A border enforcement advocacy organization says it should be a no-brainer that a valid ID should be required for voting, even though it does not seem to be the case with the VP. Chad Groening has more.
Vice President Kamala Harris was lambasted over the weekend for requiring those attending her campaign rally in Glendale, Arizona, to provide a government-issued ID for entry, despite the Democrat presidential nominee's opposition to requiring a valid ID to vote. The rally with her vice presidential running mate Tim Walz was an RSVP-only event. The campaign began receiving blowback on social media for Harris's perceived hypocrisy. Ira Millman is media director for the Federation for American Immigration Reform.
We should expect that all politicians, all Americans, would want to ensure that the integrity of our elections are safeguarded. And one of the ways of doing that is to have some kind of legitimate ID that says that you are eligible to register to vote and to cast a vote, and that when you go to the polls, you're actually the person that you purport to be. So this should be kind of a no-brainer, a bipartisan sort of issue, but it does not seem to be the case.
Still, Millman says what Harris does at her events is up to her.
It's her event, and I guess she can set the rules.
I'm Chad Groening.
More news online at afn.net and the AFN mobile app. I'm Rusty Pugh.
The American Family Association's mission is to inform, equip, and activate individuals to strengthen the moral foundations of our culture. We also support the church. Our goal is to be a leading organization in biblical worldview training for cultural transformation. We believe true morality flows from biblical principles and directs people to the manner in which God intends them to live.
Thank you for standing with the American Family Association as we seek to stop the erosion of godly values.
Welcome to Today's Issues, offering a Christian response to the issues of the day. Here's your host, Tim Wildman, President of the American Family Association.
Hey, good morning, everybody, and welcome to Today's Issues on the American Family Radio Network. Thanks for listening to AFR. It's August 13, 2024. And as always, we thank you for listening. Joining me in studio is Wesley Wildman.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning, Chris Woodward.
Hello.
And in Kansas City, KS, is our good friend, Dr. Ray Pritchard. Good morning, Ray.
Good morning, Tim. How you doing today?
I'm doing good. I ask you sometimes, thanks for asking, I ask you sometimes give us a good word to start the show. What do you got?
Okay, today my wife and I were reading Matthew chapter 8 and Matthew chapter 9. And that's when you read those two chapters, it goes from one miracle to another. It's the fellow that's dropped down through the ceiling, and then it's the guys out there in the tombs, and then there's two guys blind. And it sort of at the end of it, it says this: Jesus went through all the towns and villages, teaching in their synagogues, preaching the kingdom, and healing every disease and sickness. When he saw the crowds, he was moved with compassion because they were harassed and helpless like sheep without a shepherd. Here's what we're supposed to get out of that, among many other things, is if you're sick, Jesus cares about you. If you're hurting, Jesus cares about you. If you're down on your luck today, he sees you. He knows. If he's got time for two guys coming out of the tombs, he's got time for you. If he's got time for a guy lowered down through the ceiling, my friends, he's got time for you. He sees you, he hears, he cares. Maybe you feel this world has failed you. Maybe you feel like you've blown everything. Just take a good look at Jesus. He came for you. He will meet you right now, right where you are.
Ray, that's a great message, because when we're healthy and everything's going fine, especially health's a big one. When everything's healthy, of course, you got other issues. You got financial issues, you got relationship issues. But when you have your health, and when your health is good, you don't really think about others necessarily that are going through the suffering of not having good health. And there's variations of health there. But when you were speaking those words or sharing that message, you got to believe there's someone listening now that are in some form of health crisis or financial crisis, and that message obviously applies to all of us, but really meets right there for the person or the group of people that are in need, health and financially.
Well, Wesley, that's amazing, because in those two chapters, he says it's the sick who need a doctor. If you're healthy, you don't need one. And the truth is, Wesley, we're all in trouble.
That's right. On this side of heaven, for sure.
We're all in trouble this side of heaven. So no matter who you are, Jesus is ready to meet you, and he will meet you. You just say to yourself, could he meet me while I'm listening to a radio program? Yes, he can. He will. Turn to him, cry out to him. He will meet you right where you are.
Amen.
And what is your website, Ray, if people want to,
surf on over to keepbelieving.com. And we've got a lot of resources that'll help you. The great need is to know Jesus better, and that's what our website's all about. So come see us at keepbelieving.com.
All right. Again, folks, we hope you're having a good Tuesday, and we got a lot to talk about, current events, things happening in the news. And Jenna Ellis will be on with us at the bottom of the hour. Our purpose in these discussions we have on this show every day, although maybe it doesn't always seem like it, we're trying to put things in proper perspective in terms of the Constitution, in terms of our freedom and liberty and our way of life that we enjoy here in the U.S. Those things matter. We're also trying to put things in a biblical worldview context, because we believe in the God of the Bible. He does speak. And he does give us direction, each individually and corporately, on what we should do to follow him, Wesley.
Wow, Dad, well done. Yeah,
that's why I'm here.
It was like
I try to.
That was.
I just I don't like to outshine other people, So that's why I kind of hold back.
Yeah, and I hated to. I don't want to take us off, on to our typical jokes.
I don't
let
this show go wandering.
But that was well said. That may be Adam's our producer today. Adam, we may need to find a way to make that part of the intro to the program.
Yeah.
This I know we don't like to change intros, but we could mark that one.
We've had the same intro music.
That's right.
Since we started, almost with Marvin Sanders and me.
But you're right.
Back in the 90s.
You're exactly right. We try to take the things that are happening every day and to apply a biblical worldview to them. Obviously, I've learned over the years is that there are core issues, then there's secondary, and then you got peripheral, and then some right on the edge of that. And so we try to take those. Some of the things we cover are right there, and you can a little bit of a gray area. So we have to do the best we can with the scriptures we got. But
right, kind of like ivermectin.
Right, very it's kind of like ivermectin.
It's kind of a gray area.
And then when we have a pastor or a biblical theological question, we always got Ray right there.
Amen. All right, so Chris, what's happening in our world today?
Well, I do want to bring people's attention to one quick thing, and then we can move into some other equally, if not more important news. Today is a primary day in 4 states: Connecticut, Minnesota, Vermont, and Wisconsin. Minnesota is one that we are really watching because radical Democrat Representative Ilhan Omar is facing a primary challenge from Don Samuels. Don Samuels is a former Minneapolis council member who ran a very close race against Ilhan Omar back in 2022. She beat him by about 2,000 votes in that 2022 Democratic primary. People are watching this race because Ilhan Omar is a member of the so-called squad, and the squad has lost 2 members.
Lost their treasurer and their vice president.
Right, yes. The most recent squad member to get ousted in a primary was Cori Bush of Missouri. We aired her soundbite. This time around, it does not look like AIPAC is involved in this race, AIPAC being the American Israel Public Affairs Committee, which was involved in the Cori Bush and some of the other primary efforts against squad members. But interestingly enough, Don Samuels has been getting a campaign boost from various donors after the Cori Bush loss. So
he's a Democrat too, right?
He is, yes.
But what's happened is some of these Democrat House of Representatives members that are part of the squad, they got so far left, even the Democrat Party doesn't want them anymore.
That's right.
Very true.
And you got to really be bad.
And they know that pawning them off on us is not going to work.
No, they're not going to be. They're not going to be welcome in the Republican Party.
No chance.
Or the conservative. Anyway. So you're saying a lot of interest will be on this particular individual House race.
Yes.
In Minneapolis, it's where the Somalis live, right?
Correct.
The Somali Americans, and she represents their district.
Correct.
And she's being challenged, and she may lose. She may lose. Is it a possibility?
It's a possibility.
Okay.
I don't know how likely it is.
In this case, can party platforms cross over and vote?
I don't know. I'll double check.
In Minnesota?
In Minnesota.
I doubt it.
There's probably not 7 Republicans in her district.
That's true. But
it's not a statewide race.
Conservative. I meant more just generally Republicans.
Yeah. Anyway, we'll see what happens there. But they're the squad. Their meetings are, getting slimmer.
They are, yes.
Because in terms of attendance, because they're being taken out one by one.
Right. Jamal Bowman was the first squad member to be voted out. He's the guy that pulled the fire alarm to stop a vote.
Right.
He was defeated by an AIPAC-funded
even
Democrat.
AOC Rappin couldn't help
and
he was already defeated, right?
He was defeated. That was the first one to go down as far as the squad members, and then Cori Bush was the most recent.
All right, next story.
Well, Donald Trump and Elon Musk had a sit-down event last night on Musk's X platform, X being the site formerly known as Twitter. And there's a lot to take away from this, but I've got some sound bites from Donald Trump because we're only 80-some-odd days until the election. And Donald Trump talked about how a lot of people in the media and in the Democratic Party have talked about how Kamala is this great leader, Vice President Kamala Harris is this great leader, and she's got all this experience, as if there's not a ton of evidence in the last 3.5 years to say otherwise. So let's begin there. We got Donald Trump talking here, clip 1.
Where's she been for 3.5 years? Kamala was the border czar. Now she's denying it. She's saying she was strong on the border. We're going to be strong. Well, she doesn't have to say it. She could close it up right now.
That's just one thing.
How long did they talk?
Oh.
This was on X.
Yes.
And this was, Ray, are you aware of this was going on?
Yeah, and I tried to get on, Tim, and part of the problem was it crashed in the beginning. Yeah. I tried, and it had crashed, and I tried again, and I guess, eventually, after a 25-minute delay or something, it got on.
Here's a strange thing. Elon Musk is one of the smartest men and the wealthiest men in the world. Mm-hmm. And the things he's accomplished technologically with his companies and everything, Tesla, and then is it SpaceLink or what is
SpaceX.
it? SpaceX.
Mm-hmm.
Something.
Starlink is the internet.
Starlink, yeah. I mean, he has multiple companies that he's pioneered, if you will. But this is the second time I'm aware of where he's had a much anticipated interview session, Ray, scheduled. Governor Ron DeSantis,
Same thing.
Announced his candidacy, and the crash, and that they had major problems with the technologically with the interview getting started and so forth. And the same thing happened yesterday with Donald Trump. Now, he did say, Elon Musk, that his servers were attacked. But I'm thinking, well, you can't let that happen. You know what I'm saying? And look good. Anyway, Ray, I just thought it was ironic.
Well, evidently somebody somewhere, and you can hypothesize who that might be.
Who's doing that?
Right, somebody somewhere organized a directed denial of service attack. And so if you have thousands of these, I don't know, I can't explain the electronics.
No, go ahead and try. We'll wait.
Please. All I know is they attacked the X servers and basically shut it down for 25 minutes or so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Somebody who didn't like Musk, or somebody who didn't like Trump, or somebody who didn't
or both.
Didn't like both. But, now Elon Musk, correct me if I'm wrong, he endorsed Trump, right?
Right.
Yes. He did after the attempted assassination. Within a day or so, he not only came out and endorsed him because of the attempted assassination, but he went further and committed to $25 million a month.
Yeah.
In donation.
Did he really commit? Cause one thing I said, one interview I saw said he didn't commit. Maybe he committed to giving to a PAC or something like that.
Yeah, I think that's what it was. A PAC.
A PAC that supported.
That's
okay.
true. Yeah.
But listen, with respect, Ray, to Elon Musk, okay. Right. He is endorsing Trump, and I think here's the reason. I don't know that he. I don't know. I don't think he and Trump are necessarily close, but he understands what's at stake here in the direction of our country. Elon Musk does. He's a businessman.
So capitalist.
He came to America from South Africa. He's made his billions globally, yes, but with his companies based in the U.S. Sure. And he understands. He's a big believer in freedom of speech.
Yep.
And he sees the left, the political left in this country, wanting to seize and control everything, corporately, business-wise, regulations, speech, and all these things. And because Musk hasn't always been he's not a, quote, traditional conservative. He says that he believes in the principles of Christianity, but he doesn't have a personal conversion story that I've heard. But he's a good person and somebody who appreciates the place of the United States of America in the world today.
Right.
So that's the reason he bought X. He didn't have to do that. He saved people. Some people would say he saved complete dominance in the social media sphere. Right.
Yeah.
By the lefties.
To your point here about...
I had several points.
Yes. Well, you mentioned phrases like freedom of speech and how Democrats want to seize and control everything. To your point, there was a moment in the White House press briefing yesterday to which the Washington Post reporter Cleve Woodson Jr. asked Karine Jean-Pierre whether the White House was considering or whether the White House could do something to prevent people from being able to hear Musk and Trump talk politics here. I'm not making it up. Clip 3.
Elon Musk is slated to interview Donald Trump tonight on X. I don't know if the president is going to tune in. Feel free to say if he is or not. But I think that misinformation on Twitter is not just a campaign issue. It's a America issue. What role does the White House or the president have in sort of stopping that or stopping the spread of that, or sort of intervening in that. Some of that was about campaign misinformation, but it's a wider thing, right?
Yeah, no, and you've heard us talk about this many times from here about the responsibilities that social media platforms have when it comes to misinformation, disinformation. Don't have anything to read out from here about specific ways that we're working on it, but we believe that they have the responsibility. These are private companies, so we're also mindful of that too. But look, it is. I think it is incredibly important to call that out as you're doing. I just don't have any specifics on what we have been doing internally as it relates to the interviews. Not something that I'm tracking, and I'm sure the president's not tracking it either.
Now, ironically, guys, the Washington Post motto or slogan is democracy dies in darkness. This campaign, this White House administration is all about, quote, democracy and protecting democracy. And here you have a guy from a news outlet saying, what is the White House going to do to block people from listening to this?
Yeah. Well, and then Karine Jean-Pierre basically says, I'm not tracking it and I'm not keeping up with it. Mm-hmm. So how does she even know what it is?
That's very true. I didn't think about that.
Karine Jean-Pierre. I'm surprised she didn't say, let me be clear. I'm going to be clear, and I want to refer you to another agency.
Yeah. You're going to have to check with the FCC and FTC.
Yeah, she's that's funny coming from her about misinformation.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing that the Washington Post, which is nothing more than a shill for the Democrats,
right,
that they are concerned about misinformation. It's rather shocking, I think, that somebody it is a prestigious newspaper, to actually in the White House at a press briefing say, what can you do to stop the misinformation, as if they're asking the White House to do something to shut down.
Let's hear the way he asked that question again. So what we're hearing is a reporter from the Washington Post,
correct,
which is still one of the most influential newspapers in the country.
Owned by Jeff Bezos.
Yes, but asking the White House press secretary this question. Go ahead and play that again real quick.
Elon Musk is slated to interview Donald Trump tonight on X. I don't know if the president is going to tune in. Feel free to say if he is or not. But I think that misinformation on Twitter is not just a campaign issue. It's a America issue. What role does the White House or the president have in sort of stopping that or stopping the spread of that? Or
okay, stop that right there. That's dangerous, what he's suggesting.
And he's prefacing on I think that. Like,
well,
who cares
he said
what
misinformation, matter of factly. Let me just say this, because I do visit, the X is on my, it's an app on your phone.
For better or for worse.
Yeah, well.
Yes, on your phone.
You gotta, you could stay on there all day, every day.
I know.
Zoned out, because it's very, it's very addictive in a way, in terms of the constant information. If you're an information junkie and news junkie, it's always coming your way on the Twitter feed. But let me just say this: is there misinformation on Twitter? Yeah.
Yes.
It's like a smorgasbord. I mean, people who sign up from all over the world can post anything they want. Right. So I don't know exactly this fellow's. What is he getting at exactly here? Except it's politics, and what I hear him saying is, listen, somebody's got to stop Elon Musk.
That's what he means. That's exactly what he means.
Okay.
Well, yeah, and I thought if you pay attention, because most of the time there's exceptions. Most of the time it's the Democratic side. It's KJP and it's that group that says the other team, Republicans and other outlets are misinformation.
Misinformation.
That's misinformation.
Mm-hmm. And they get to define what misinformation is.
Right. But listen to how this could take you completely off listening to the conversation, but try to count how many times, because I've done this before, try to count how many times they say this is misinformation, and then they give you the information that they believe is true. More times than not, they don't even share with you their position. They just make sure that they want you to believe that that's misinformation. Mm-hmm. Because if you really believe that, then you would say this is wrong and this is right. they don't even tell you what they believe in their own eyes to be right. They just all they do is apply misinformation and then just talk in circles. You know what I'm saying? Like, they don't even share their idea that they believe is right.
Well, listen, all politicians lie.
Oh, sure.
I'm going to break it to you.
No, wait, when did that start?
I'm sorry, guys.
Yeah, and then
that's going to probably affect
no
you.
idea.
And then some of the better of the best ones, they get.
Oh, Republicans, they can tell whoppers too.
Well, I'm not saying Republicans can't. I'm thinking about the one person out there. Okay,
who's that?
I don't know. There's got to be a conservative. There got to be an evangelical Christian conservative leader out there.
Who cares if they lie or not?
Cares, and I'm believing that sometimes in politics they get signed off on.
I know this is very
I'll stop now.
I know that's a very cynical view that I expressed there, that all politicians lie. Maybe they.
What about mislead?
They spin things.
Sure,
you could call it spinning. But the others. Here's the point. Here's the point. Even if they do lie, even if they do give out
it's up for the public to discern that.
Yes, even if they do give out quote misinformation, you don't want to give one set. You don't want some board, Ray, somewhere set up by Democrat political operatives saying, okay, we're the misinformation board.
Right.
Hey, isn't that what's happening over there in the UK and in Europe?
Yes, yes.
They're sending they sent a threatening letter to Elon Musk.
Yes, they did.
Yesterday.
Yes.
Threatening him, basically saying you can't put Donald Trump on or we may take you down in Great Britain, whatever.
Right.
I saw a little bit of that letter. That's pretty, to me, that's
they're trying
totalitarian.
The party that promotes themselves as free thinkers and progressive, and we're moving forward. Right. They're the ones that are so scared of other people's ideas.
Right.
That they feel the need that they have to get involved and to, in this case, suggest even potentially.
Well, also Tim Walz, is that his name? The governor of Minnesota. He's the vice presidential candidate with Kamala Harris. Walz
with a Z,
like
WALZ. Anyway. You remember we had a quote on from him the other day where he said, I don't know if we still have that or not. He said, Tim Walz, he said, and this is before he was named her VP choice. This is a year or two ago. He said, yeah, he used the word push back against the idea that there's a First Amendment right to misinformation and hate speech. That's what he said. Well, guess who gets to decide that? He does.
Right.
And he gets to decide what hate speech is and whether it should be allowed and how it should be allowed. Well, that leads to what happens in the UK, what happens in Canada. Canada, they shut down free. You don't have absolute free speech in Canada.
Yep. Right.
It's not like the U.S.
Brett's talked about that on here.
So,
the most dangerous part about that is that freedom of speech ends up coming to freedom of action. That's the next step. If they can silence your thoughts, then your words, then
also if they get control in the U.S., if they get control by I mean these secular progressives get total control of like the licensing. Okay, television, radio stations, we have to have license from the Federal Communications Commission to be able to operate. But what if they get in control and they say, you know what? You're a hate.
Pick and choose
you say homosexuality is a sin according to the Bible. Well, guess what? That's hate speech, and we're revoking your license.
And that's what they've already done in Canada.
Oh yeah. We'll be back momentarily. Stay with us.
It's my turn.
Here is your host for My Turn, Don Wildman.
For 17 years, the Green Gate was a striptease club in San Antonio, Texas. All kinds of people came to the Green Gate. Some were lonely people seeking companionship. Some were frustrated people trying to sap a temporary thrill from a life that had no meaning. Some were ignorant people who thought life offered nothing higher than a bottle of booze and a naked dame. The Green Gate is closed now. It's out of business. It wasn't so much a lack of business that closed the Green Gate. It was more of a change of attitude on the part of the owner. Guy Linton closed down his club and said it will stay closed. Linton even posted a sign over the club door which read, "Closed forever." There's many clubs like the Green Gate still in operation across the country, thousands of them. There people can go to find lights low, music loud, and booze plentiful. Many of them do a thriving business, living off the superficial food they offer to the deep hunger in the human heart. Dr. Gallup ran a poll on happiness many years ago. He found that the most unhappy people were those who visited the taverns and clubs. Isn't that strange? The people out having a good time, supposedly, are the most unhappy people you'll find. Will Rogers, a man of a day gone by, used to tell about a druggist who was asked if he ever took time off from his duties to have a good time. The druggist said that he did not, but that he sold a lot of headache medicine to those who did. What is a good time? How do you define it? Is it something that has no lasting value in it? Is gone when you wake up the next morning? Or is it the deep satisfaction that comes from knowing you're drinking deep from the cup of life offered by the Father? Surely happiness comes from having some great objective, beneficial to mankind, and single-mindedly pursuing that objective with all the strength in oneself. Some of those who are seeking happiness in the clubs and taverns are surprised when they finally find happiness. They're surprised to find that it comes not from a club, but from a cause, a great and demanding cause. Guy Linton found it in this manner. You see, Linton made his decision to close the Green Gate after listening to a sermon. Guy Linton has, to use the familiar words, changed over to the Lord's side. But don't worry about the Green Gate. Linton has said that the Green Gate will be turned into a religious bookstore. Let's hope the Green Gate keeps its same customers that it had for many years. And unless other club owners are ready to close down their clubs, we advise them to stay away from the Man of Galilee.
This has been My Turn with Don Wildman, a production of the American Family Association.
Hey, 8 Days of Hope family, this is Steve Tybert. As God continues to expand this ministry, we cherish your involvement, whether it's through praying, volunteering, or donating. You know, it can be hard to stay up to date on all that God is doing through 8 Days of Hope, and we'd hate for you to miss an opportunity to get involved. And so today we're going to invite you to find us on social media to see regular updates on how we are loving and serving those in need across the country through our Rebuilding, Rapid Response, Safe House, and Mass Feeding ministries. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Music at 8 Days of Hope. That's 8 Days of Hope. We want you to stay connected as we travel the country and commit to support us through your prayers and volunteering. If this isn't the season for you to travel, we invite you to consider becoming a monthly supporter of the work God is calling us to do. You can sign up to make monthly contributions at 8daysofhope.com. That's 8daysofhope.com. Thank you for your continued support and prayers. We couldn't do what God's called us to do without your support.
The Lord looks down from heaven on all mankind to see if there are any who understand, any who seek God. Psalm 14, verse 2.
American Family Radio. This is today's issues. Email your comments to comments@afr.net. Past broadcasts of today's issues are available for listening and viewing in the archive at afr.net. Now, back to more of today's issues.
Hey, welcome back, everybody, to today's issues. That's the name of the program here on the American Family Radio Network. Tim?
I've got an issue. I've got an issue. I'm tangled up here.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
I'm going to take this off.
Your headset. Well, that's the headset Ed used yesterday that he didn't plug in.
Is that
you
what
got all
happened?
kind of metaphors for life.
He was hacked.
You got an issue. Issues
You
resolved.
got issues. You're tangled up. You're not plugged in.
Do you think maybe
there's a sermon there?
There it is. This problem solved. Can we solve some more problems in the news?
Absolutely.
Okay.
We don't solve problems in news. We just tell you
You
about
just
the
report 'em.
problems.
Hey, you just make us, your job is to make everybody feel bad, isn't
So
it?
then
It
you're
is.
telling me that I
It
just
is.
spread misinformation.
Yes,
There we
yes,
go.
and
There
you
you
should be
go.
banned. Yes.
Yeah, but I corrected myself.
Well,
Now I feel like I did the right thing.
Well, let your conscience be your guide. Ray Pritchard's in Kansas City, and we thank you for listening to American Family Radio. Joining us now is Jenna Ellis. Jenna is host of Jenna Ellis in the Morning from 7:05 to 8 o'clock Central Time right here on American Family Radio on this station. Good morning, Jenna.
Good morning. And my issue is usually that I have too many tabs open in my brain. So I don't, I need to figure out
Good
some
point.
way to control,
Yes.
delete all, and then focus on one thing.
There you go. Too many tabs open in the brain. That'd be like a country song or something like that, I think.
Well, that's better than walking in our IT department here on staff, and if they're listening, I'm not saying anything
They're
and
about to
said to
shut
them
down
to
your
their face.
microphone.
Right.
But when you walk in there,
dead on us here.
I can't think of one IT person here on staff that doesn't have 64, 66 tabs open right now on their computer.
Well, they're made different.
Yeah,
these people.
I have on my phone a total of 502 tabs open right
You're
now.
lying.
No,
Well,
I can.
You can screenshot it, right?
353
Yep.
right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Well,
Yep.
then you know what?
I know.
You just want an opportunity to work for the IT department.
You don't
Because
want
that's
me
the
there.
First thing.
Okay. Tech knows that I'm a girl.
Okay.
I'm convinced, and so they don't like me.
So then
all the tech.
So then outside the tabs, you really wouldn't fit in then.
Yes.
Okay.
So
all
true.
right.
Okay, so Jenna, before the break, we were talking about I call them the secular left in this country, I guess, opposed to the religious left, and there is a religious left in this country, but they're really not just in this country. They are, as we saw the letter to Elon Musk from the European Commission. Do you know what I'm talking about, Jenna?
I do, yeah. And we talked about that this morning, actually, with the tech policy advisor from the Heritage Foundation.
Okay, so these people, by these people, I'm talking about these global elitists who are almost all, quote, progressives, and they're almost all secular, and they just detest anything conservative, anything Christian. They find that to be anything that promotes really freedom of speech, freedom of thought, a free country. They maybe wouldn't necessarily say it like that out loud, but what is it about these folks that they want to control everything?
Well, I think that they're actually worse than secular, because that term really denotes attitudes or a worldview that have no specific religious or spiritual basis. These people absolutely do have a religion, and it's paganism. It is, and it's grounded in genuinely evil. And you see that with the rise of globalism and a country without borders, with tyranny, with this type of view that says that we can censor all speech that is, quote, misinformation or disinformation, that's basically doesn't fall in line with government propaganda. I mean, it's the same thing that the Chinese Communist Party is doing. It's the same thing that Mao did. I mean, it's the same thing that every tyrant that has pushed for communism has pushed, and this is now just in the new age of digital media. And so I think that we need to talk about worldview, and what I've been focusing on my show in the morning is talking about this contrasting worldview that you're seeing from Kamala Harris and the extreme radical left here in America, but you're seeing from the World Economic Forum, the global elites, people like the European Commission, that are specifically trying to create a leftist utopia in their own image, redefine reality, push queer theory, push all of these other things that basically deny truth. They deny Western civilization that was founded on the Judeo-Christian worldview, and ultimately rejecting God in favor of a replacement for God, which tends to be a political regime that allows for overt satanic activity and ultimately paganism and the worship of false gods.
Ray?
So, Jenna, let me ask you about last night. President Trump sat down with Elon Musk. A little rough start there for unexplained tech glitches, denial of service, Elon Musk said. But after a while, they finally got their conversation going. How did you, as looking as a very interested observer, what do you think about what happened last night?
Well, two things. First, I thought the conversation itself, once it got going, was excellent. And I think yesterday was the best day that the Trump campaign has had since the debate with Joe Biden, where clearly the contrast was there. But I think for Trump, Donald Trump returning to X, which is a huge public square platform that allows for conservative content, is truly free speech. And then to have that just free form conversation with Elon, getting into a wide variety of issues, talking about the digital content that and federal restraint and streamlining things, the economy, all of that was great and showed Trump's mastery of some of those issues. With respect to the 40-minute delay, this was kind of shades of the DeSantis campaign in the primary when he launched on X, and everybody saying, oh, this was a failure to launch, and there were just a lot of glitches. I think that while it could be that there was a cyber attack, and it could also just be that there were so many people overwhelming the space that wanted to tune in that it just overwhelmed the platform. The reality is that especially Congress in America, and especially governors and state legislatures, really need to look at digital platforms. They need to look at the cybersecurity, national security issues. They need to look at some of like the Digital Policy Act that Trump is pushing, and really ensure that we don't get to the place where we have that kind of cybersecurity attack on our power grid, for example. I mean, these are just shades of what could come if we're not actually serious about addressing national security issues beyond this so-called misinformation that the left wants to talk about. We have actual issues that Congress needs to address.
Talking to Jenna Ellis. Jenna, one more issue you comment on. I know you're a Floridian.
Proudly.
Proudly, the free state of Florida, as it's called.
Woohoo!
Tell me about this Amendment 4 that's going to be voted on in November. Is that a statewide referendum? What is that?
Yeah, so it is. It will be on the ballot here in Florida. So if you are a Floridian, know the amendments. Amendment 3 and 4 are the worst things for Florida. 3 is to legalize recreational marijuana. Coming from Colorado, which used to be my home state, which was one of the first to pass Amendment 64 in that state, which just devastated so much of Colorado, and we're seeing what happens in California. We don't want to Californize our Florida, so vote no on that. But Amendment 4 is bad for Florida because essentially what this would do would override the heartbeat bill protections for restrictions and promoting life in regulating abortion on the state level. So what it would do, Amendment 4, so vote no on this from a policy value perspective, it would eliminate parental consent for minors seeking abortions and making abortion the only procedure a minor could get in the state without a parent's consent. It removes doctors from the decision making when people say, oh, it's between a woman and her doctor. It would just allow any so-called healthcare provider, including a chiropractor, including anybody really, to make that decision. And it would allow abortion in Florida up until the moment of birth and would invalidate all pro-life protections in state law. This is Soros and Planned Parenthood funded, and Florida is the test state for this now being a state issue in the wake of Dobbs. And if they can pass this, it's a 60% threshold in the state of Florida, but if they can pass this in a deeply red state that DeSantis has marshaled very well, then they know that this type of plan would work in other states. So please, if you are voting in Florida, vote to protect life. Vote no on Amendment 4. Vote no on Amendment 3.
But hasn't similar things happened in Ohio and Kansas and Montana, and where they've had abortion on the state ballot?
Yeah, and that's really, in the midst of legislatures now having the ability to legislate in the wake of Dobbs' decision, a lot of what the the pro-state-funded abortion-on-demand activists are doing is now bringing these state referendums, and what they're doing is very sinister as well, because the language is so convoluted and vague that if you're not aware of which way you should vote, then it's very confusing. And a lot of people in Ohio in particular were confused about that language, thought they were voting for one thing, and actually voted for something else. A lot of the exit polls showed.
Yeah, now the good thing about the Florida situation, about the Amendment 4 and Amendment 3, as you mentioned, I can't imagine just having recreational. Florida is such a family-friendly vacation
atmosphere.
I mean, so many people in the country want to go to Florida to vacation with their families. I'm talking about, it's really not it's not like Party Central necessarily, unless it's spring break in Fort Lauderdale or something like that. But I can't imagine just being able to have people out on the beach smoking dope. I mean, that's just seems to me crazy for the image of your state. Maybe that'll be rejected. But this on this Amendment 4, at least the threshold is 60%, right?
Yes, and that's encouraging.
Okay, and so one other thing here, then Wesley, I promise I'll give you 3 or 4.
I've got a question.
Oh, you got 4 words coming to you. Okay, you just hold them.
I'll go over here and think about them.
All right, so what's led to this statewide ballot initiative, I think, is this. Maybe a year and a half ago or so, the Florida State Legislature passed a 6-week heartbeat bill, is what they call it, and that is to say, and Governor Ron DeSantis signed it, and what it was if you can detect a heartbeat of a baby at 6 weeks, then that's obviously a human life. Obviously, a human life. It's got a heartbeat, and therefore is protected in the state of Florida. That's the essence of the heartbeat bill. And so that's going to be decided by the state of Florida. You want to keep that, or you just want to have abortion on demand up to the full 9 months? That's what's at stake here with this vote coming up in November. Now, former President Trump, Jenna, where does he stand on this? He's a Floridian.
He is, and he was asked in his press conference last week how he intends to vote on this, and he did not give a direct answer. He said that would be forthcoming, and then clarified that it would probably be a lot more liberal than people anticipate. He's been saying since Dobbs that this is a state issue. And interestingly, some of the members of Congress who are Republican from the state of Florida, like Byron Donalds, for example, have not specifically said where they stand either, and just keep saying, well, this is a state issue. And last time I checked, Florida's a state. This is now becoming a state issue. It's on the ballot in the state. And so my hope is that when Donald Trump does actually address the question and says how he intends to vote as a Florida resident, that he would stand firmly for life, and at the very least see that Amendment 4 is radically extreme because of removing the parental consent. I mean, so many of those things, even if he sticks with opposing the heartbeat bill like he unfortunately did, Amendment 4 is not the solution to that, even for moderates. So that's what I hope, and I would really hope that people would implore Trump and the Trump campaign to take a very hard stance opposing Amendment 4.
All right, Jenna. Thanks for joining us. Who do you have on tomorrow? Do you have a guest? Or you
Thanks so much. We haven't quite booked out the show yet, so it'll be a surprise. But we know that Todd and Copper will be there.
Todd and Copper, two dudes.
The two dudes will be there, and we always appreciate everyone who writes in and says hi to them, and they always say hi back. So.
All right, take care, Jenna. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, bye-bye. That's Jenna Ellis. Wesley, you're on the clock.
Okay, I only get 4 words.
No. I'm going to double that. You got 8 words, and you got 12 seconds. Go.
You got the clock.
I'm kidding. Go ahead.
I know you are. Well, with the 4 words I've got, this is going to completely take us off track here, but I haven't been able to do it this week yet, and it's, what is it, Monday?
Tuesday.
Tuesday. I want Walker.
You just took us off track, not knowing what day it was, but go ahead.
It's Wednesday in Australia.
Walker, you are wrong. That's my brother. And
Okay.
that's the 4 words I got, and I'll hand it off to you. I just got to get that in. If I get to choose 4 words, I just want to let Walker know he's wrong.
Okay.
Whatever
okay.
it is, whatever's
Whatever
going on.
it is, it doesn't matter.
It was his fault.
You know, I'm naturally curious being the news guy.
Yeah.
Like, now I'm going to have to do a deep dive and figure out what that's about.
Yeah, well, so I can give a little bit.
Well,
To continue taking us off track.
You got to
here.
comment on something Jenna was saying or something?
Well, I was going to ask her a question, but she's not with us anymore.
Well, I can answer for her. Go
Okay.
ahead.
I was going to ask her, so what happens here in the event that this does fail, which hopefully, Lord willing, conservatives will get out and vote, and we vote no, and Amendment 4 fails in Florida. If that's the case, does what's on the books now currently, and would that just remain in place?
Stands.
It stands.
Yeah. Yeah, if the Amendment 4 is did she say vote no or yes?
She said vote no. I'm looking at it right here.
She said vote no. So if
Ballotpedia.
if they can if less than 60% vote yes, then the law will stand.
Right.
The heartbeat law will stand, and
Okay, that's the answer. The
that's
heartbeat
the
law
answer.
stays. So
Yeah.
nothing changes. It just
I appreciate the fact that in Florida they have a 60% threshold, because listen, our country and nationally and then the state level we're not a democracy. We're a form of democracy in the sense that if you want to define democracy, Ray, as a representative form of government, if that's the way you define democracy, yes. But we're not a true democracy. We don't vote on everything. You don't go down to the city. You don't go down to your voting precinct every Tuesday and vote on whether they're going to pick up trash on 3 days a week or 2 days a week. No, and the majority wins.
50.1%.
Yeah, we don't do that. No, we elect people to represent us at a state, local, national level, who then make decisions on behalf of the public. And if the public agrees with enough of their decisions, they'll be reelected. If not, they'll be voted out. So we're a constitutional republic that is a representative form of government. We're not, quote, a true, straight up democracy. So hopefully and prayerfully, the amendments in Florida, Ray, will stand. Not the amendments, but the law as it currently exists.
On one hand, you think this is the state that elected Ron DeSantis, right? A great conservative leader. How could this happen? But look, we saw what happened in Ohio, right here in Kansas. I think we were maybe the first state.
Now, that was 50% threshold, right? I don't think that was 60.
That's right. 60 is a high percentage. Yeah. And Ron DeSantis is outspoken in his pro-life convictions. I think, Tim, if the Christians in Florida come out and vote as Christians should, this thing will be defeated.
All right, I just fact checked Dad. You got fact checked, and you are correct. Jenna answered. Jenna's listening. She texted in and said that you are correct.
Yeah,
heartbeat bill stands.
If they defeat defeat the amendment.
That's right. Yeah, I just want you to know you were right.
Okay, well, I get that a lot.
Not to fact check the boss, so that was too far there.
All right.
Hey, I will point out, if you go to our Today's Issues Facebook page, I have posted the Ballotpedia link about Florida to the Facebook page. Also, keep looking through our posts, because Florida is one of several states voting somehow one way or another on abortion or abortion-related issues this November. Other states are Colorado, Maryland, New York, Nevada, if you're of that persuasion, as well as South Dakota. And it'll explain all of what they're voting on and how and whatnot. So if you are listening to us from, let's say, for example, the great state of South Dakota, you'll get that information that matters to you.
All right, you're listening to Today's Issues, the name of the program on the American Family Radio Network. Thanks for listening to AFR. Tim, Wesley, Chris, and Ray. What's your next story, Chris?
Well, we have talked a lot about Vice President Kamala Harris and how people are treating her, specifically those on the left, in mainstream media or in public offices, but certainly the mainstream media. Clearly, they would rather have Vice President Harris than former President Trump. It's down to like Time Magazine. They've got a big cover story of her. It's being branded the reintroduction of Vice President Harris. Time Magazine, for example, has this big cover story. Didn't even interview her for it. It's a complete puff piece. That's just one example.
Put her on the cover, and didn't even interview her.
Very true. Very correct. But I've got some audio here from Outkick host Tommy Lahren on the media treatment of Vice President Harris. Clip 4.
Well, Todd, I think you stole the words right out of my mouth, because the media is doing all the work for Vice President and now candidate Kamala Harris, and she doesn't even have to give them anything in return. She doesn't even have to give them an interview. She doesn't have to answer questions. She doesn't have to interact with them at all. They're happy to put her face on the cover of this magazine, write great things about her, even acknowledging that she won't speak to them. So obviously the media is in the can for Kamala Harris. They're usually in the can for most Democrat candidates. But really what this is about is that Kamala Harris is not Donald Trump, and they want to see anybody but Donald Trump. They haven't liked her for the last 4 years. They haven't written great things about her, though. They've tried on numerous occasions to revamp her. They've really kind of put her on the shelf for several years, but now they have resurrected her.
One example of media clearly wanting her rather than him is the Associated Press, which is a news outlet every news outlet runs somehow, some way. This is the headline from an Associated Press article. It's an op-ed, but it's disguised as a news article. Their headline is, Harris is pushing joy. Trump paints a darker picture. And then they include a picture of like angry Trump with smiling Harris. And news outlets all over the place run this stuff. And that's why people go, well, she seems nice.
Go ahead, Ray. You want to comment on that?
You know, we talked about this over the years, Tim. We've talked about going back to my days here with you at 2012, 2016, 2020. Right. We talked about the fact that the media is in the tank for the Democrats. I'll tell you what seems different to me this time around. Not only are they in the tank for Kamala and the whole Democrat left-wing thing, they are doing it shamelessly. Now they're putting their thumb on the scale, and it's as if they're just smiling at the rest of the country going, see, we're trying to cheat for the Democrats, and they're not even trying to cover up their bias.
So
that's
what's
what's
called
changed.
like interfering with the election. Kinda, sorta.
Kinda,
like
sorta.
that.
Yeah.
Well, you know, I remember to your point, Ray, about the national media, at least traditionally being overwhelmingly Democrat. I remember reading a survey of White House reporters, those who cover the White House, and 90% of them identified as liberal Democrats. Mm-hmm. This was during Clinton's presidency. I'm talking, you're going to go back, what, 25 years or more? So that hasn't changed because those people hire maybe it's changed here and there, but the mainstream liberal, some call it the legacy media, they hire their own. They're not going to hire a traditionalist or a conservative. They're just because they think that they're fascist, is the way they would describe it. So, but thankfully there are alternative media sources out there in our country today. Now, some on the left would like to squash those.
Sure. Talked about that first segment.
Yeah. But, all right, there's some other things I wanted to say, but guess what? The clock stops for no man. And so we're going to break right here for news, and then we'll be back in 5 minutes with Steve Paisley-Jordahl. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
So Ray, Wesley, and yours truly will be back in 5 minutes.
Well, Todd, I think you stole the words right out of my mouth, because the media...
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American Family Radio.
Faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio.
The climax of the book of Exodus, the Creator God came to dwell with his people. You can't approach the holiness of God however you want. Jesus understood this when he says, I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me.
Friends of Israel, bringing biblical truth about Israel and the Messiah. Saturdays, 2 p.m. Central on AFR.
This is American Family Radio, a listener-supported ministry of the American Family Association.
American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh. Police in Beverly Hills, California are using drones to identify potential threats. The only problem? The drones are made in China, which is sparking fears of spying. Max Gordon has the latest from Beverly Hills.
Officials at Beverly Hills PD say they want to use American-made drones, but they say they're just not as good. The American-made drones they've looked at don't have the combination of range, battery life, and camera technology that they're looking for. The majority of the drones used by the department are from the Chinese manufacturer DJI. Bills moving through Congress and the California legislature seek to ban first responders from using these Chinese-made drones, citing security concerns. And Beverly Hills PD isn't alone. Departments across the country are using Chinese-made drones. In Beverly Hills, California, Max Gordon, Fox Business.
Police in New York City are investigating several crimes involving illegal aliens. Alexis McAdams has more from New York City.
In one case out in Coney Island, a migrant was arrested for reportedly raping a woman there, throwing her to the ground violently, and then assaulting her. And hey, this was not the first time he's been arrested for something like this in the Big Apple. Last year, the 24-year-old was busted for pretty much the same thing, according to investigators, allegedly sexually assaulting someone at a Brooklyn shelter. This comes as investigators are searching for the person who stabbed a 26-year-old man in the stomach outside of a different migrant shelter on Randall's Island yesterday. That's where we were talking to people. And just a few weeks ago, a migrant woman was shot and killed near the same spot. So people there feel very unsafe, telling me it's dangerous inside of those shelters.
A 22-year-old man was arrested and charged with multiple hate crimes Monday after police said he yelled "Free Palestine" before he slashed a Jewish man in the torso near a synagogue in Brooklyn, New York. But this is far from an isolated incident. So far this year, there have been 229 anti-Semitic hate crimes reported to the NYPD. Last year at this time, it was 126. Harvard graduate Shabbos Kestenbaum talks about the climate of Jewish hate.
Sure, whether it's college campuses, whether it's the subways of New York, whether it's the streets of LA, we've seen an explosion of Jew hatred. And I would also like to remind your audience that that victim's council member in New York said that anti-Semitic violence has no place in the Free Palestine movement, ignoring the fact that anti-Semitic violence has been a central tenet in so many of these protesters. What we are seeing is not protesting. We are seeing naked, unvarnished Jew hatred, the likes of which we really haven't seen in the United States of America. So anti-Semitism in this country is historically bad, historically high, and unless there is real political change, it will only continue to get worse.
An Ohio legislator is praying for a quick vote on the Protect All Students Act. Chris Woodward has more.
State Representative Beth Lear is behind the measure, and talking about the bill on AFR's At the Core program, Lear said it's about protecting privacy rights.
We were seeing an increase in the number of boys and men who were using girls' facilities in schools and colleges. And we had girls and their parents and superintendents contacting us and saying, we need state help for this because the federal administration was supporting mixing boys and girls in their private spaces. And in order to have some power to say no to that, they were coming to their state legislators and saying, please help. So we did manage to get that bill passed as an amendment to another bill on the last day before summer break on June 26th. So it's over in the Senate waiting for them to come back in the fall.
Lear said the debate does not have to be long.
This bill, House Bill 183, was added to a Senate bill that had already passed, Senate Bill 204. So all they have to do in the Senate is bring it up in their session and vote, yes, we agree to add the amendment, or no, we don't.
Okay.
So it doesn't have to go through the whole process. It could be very quick, and we pray that it is.
I'm Chris Woodward.
Wholesale price increases in the U.S. eased in July. The Producer Price Index, which tracks inflation before it reaches consumers, rose 0.1% from June to July. That was down from 0.2% rise a month earlier. American Family News is online at afn.net and download the AFN mobile app for your Apple or Android device. I'm Rusty Pugh.
Streaming.afa.net has now become AFA Stream, and you can find it at stream.afa.net. You see, we removed the letters ing. Our experts have determined that eliminating those 3 keystrokes, multiplied over hundreds of thousands of AFA Stream visits, could reduce the national debt and maybe increase the gross domestic product. AFA Stream, formerly streaming.afa.net. Improvements to the economy are purely theoretical. Today's Issues continues on AFR with your host, Tim Wildman, President of the American Family Association.
Hey, good morning, everybody, and welcome again to today's issues. I say good afternoon to those of you listening in the Eastern time zone. Appreciate you listening to American Family Radio. Tim, Wesley, Steve Paisley, Jordan. Good morning, Steve.
Good morning, everybody.
And Ray Pritchard. Ray's in Kansas City. We're in Tupelo, MS. Hey, Ray and Steve, and Wesley, I want to talk to you about something just before you jump into the news, Steve.
Yeah.
This is a news story, but I wanted y'all's thoughts on this.
Oh, by the way, just really quick, Walker wanted a response to your forwards. He came back with 2. You're fired.
You're fired. Yeah.
You're talking about last half hour?
Yeah.
Yes. Dad blew right over my joke, and most people wouldn't know it. But here's the thing: around the office, Walker and I pick on each other a good bit. And once a week, I make sure to yell down the hallway where everyone can hear that Walker got it wrong. And now
it doesn't matter whether it's even an issue. You just say that where everybody can hear it.
Now, of course, I leave it open-ended, and I leave the question there, like, what did he do? And then I go back to work.
Right. So it's just left hanging out there among
what did he do wrong?
6 or 8 members of the staff to know what. Okay.
So with all that said, now we have included the today's issues audience in on the joke. So now when you see Walker or you call in on his program on Wednesdays or whenever it is, y'all can help participate. All right. Appreciate that.
Yeah. Just
so you're fired.
I'm sorry. Maybe that was on my phone. He replied. Maybe he's talking to me. I don't know.
I'm gonna get Dad to rehire me.
Well, that's been I think Donald Trump has got the copyright on that.
No, you're fired. Yeah.
It's true. I didn't mean to derail you there, Tim.
No, you didn't derail me.
You got to get it.
I can derail myself. And this is this involves the war between Russia and Ukraine. And that's it's kind of the 5th story now in the news, right? If it even makes it, Ray. Because it's been going on like how long now?
What is it? Is it a year and a half, 2 years, something like that?
Since February of 2020, they took over Crimea in 2014.
I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about when Russia invaded
the current
Ukraine.
Yeah.
When did that start? Russia invades Ukraine.
Seemed like a long time ago.
2021. Beginning of 2021, Russian military. Okay, wait. Early 2022, Russia recognized as an independent state.
Are you reading about when the invasion took place? This is important, so go ahead.
On February 24, 22, Putin announced a special military operation to demilitarize and denazify Ukraine, claiming Russia had no plans.
So it's almost 2.5 years.
2.5 years in a war that most people thought would have been over in weeks, with the Russian army causing the Ukrainians to surrender.
Right.
Right? Isn't that's what most people thought?
Oh, I think I would have guessed a week max for the invasion, and it's over.
And yet, the Ukrainians have fought off the Russians now from completely dominating their country for 2.5 years. It's just been like a back and forth there. I was reading a letter from somebody I know personally the other day who has family in Ukraine, and they were just basically so distraught and upset because so many Ukrainians and Russians too, but Ukrainians have been killed by the Russian bombs, and it's just war is hell, as they say. But the reason I bring this up now is that the Russia president, Vladimir Putin, is continuing to blame the West for his nation. I'm reading from the Fox News story. The West for his nation's difficulties subduing opposition forces in Ukraine. The Russian president told regional governors and national defense officials on Monday that the Ukrainians' military current campaign in the territory of Kursk, K-U-R-S-K, that's my pronunciation. Is that Russia?
Yeah, that's in Russia. Kursk. Yeah.
So the Ukrainian army is actually in Russia right now.
That's exactly right. Right.
He said the West, this is Putin again, this is what I want to talk about. The West is fighting us with the hands of the Ukrainians, Putin told them at his home outside the capital city of Moscow, according to a report from the New York Times. Then he said this, Putin did, the enemy will certainly get the response he deserves. I don't know who he is exactly. Maybe he just, and all of our goals, without a doubt, will be accomplished, end of quote. So my question, Ray, and then Steve, Ray, you've been to Ukraine, what, couple times?
Twice, yeah.
What's going to happen there? It sounds like Putin is reaching his wits' end with the war, and his country it's got to be very unpopular. Of course, he's a dictator, so you would have to have a coup against him. But it's just sounds like to me, especially if you get into a change in the White House, which favors Ukraine, or whatever. I don't know what exactly Trump's policy is. He hasn't been definitive on that, except he would end the war in 24 hours, whatever that means.
Right.
But
right.
Could Putin get desperate and launch nuclear weapons, that kind of thing? I mean,
well, he has that at his disposal. Surely that would not happen, because you would have crossed over the threshold into World War. I mean, that's like asking, in a sense, in an analogous sense, could the Iranians, if they indeed have nuclear capability, could they launch it against Israel? Well, sure they could, but that would actually get us into World War III. Last night, President Trump, he just says whatever comes to his mind, and he said that when he's elected in November, between the time he's elected and before he takes office, he's going to get on the phone with Vladimir Putin and he's going to solve this thing. And he made it sound like, a couple of phone calls. Putin, he said, is his very good friend. So maybe that's a way out of this if President Trump is reelected. But here's the other thing, Tim, and I think it's very interesting, is that clearly the Russians were caught off guard by what the Ukrainians did just in the last couple of weeks. For somehow, and it's hard for me to understand this given all the advanced surveillance everybody has, somehow the Russians either didn't see or didn't believe that the Ukrainians would ever dare to invade Russian territory. And that's exactly what they did. And they've moved out of Ukraine into up toward the area around Kursk. And I read yesterday that so far the Ukrainians actually in about a week and a half have taken more territory than everything Russia has gained in 2024 in the eastern part of Ukraine. So it's a major problem. It was an unexpected incursion, and I think Putin is at the end of his tether. Last thing I'll say, Tim, is that if it's just a fight, if it's just a fight between Russia and Ukraine with no outside help, there's no way Russia loses that because they're so much bigger. Their armed forces are so much bigger. But now you've got the Poles and you've got the Germans and you've got the Czechs and you've got the U.S. and Great Britain providing all this advanced weaponry. It's hard to see an end to the conflict as it stands now, unless somebody does something like what Donald Trump says, gets on the phone and says, we got to end this today, because I would have said 2 weeks ago everything was in Russia's favor, but now with this incursion into Russia, it has gone back into balance. Maybe it now favors Ukraine.
Two things. One, doubt Donald Trump at your own peril. It's unlikely he could get on the phone and just solve it, but no one thought he could do the Abraham Accords either. And remember that Russia banged their head against the wall in Afghanistan for 10 years. They had nuclear weapons at the time. They didn't use them. And so they just don't. I mean, that was their Vietnam, and I don't know if history's taught them any lessons, but they could prosecute this thing for just a long, long time and draw it out.
Well, I don't know all the politics of Russia versus Ukraine. I mean, I've read and I know that there are a lot of people on the conservative side in the U.S. who would say Ukraine is worse than Russia. Okay? There are a lot of people who would say that, and they have their reasons for it. That aside, I don't want to get into that. I would just, that part of it, I would just say this. I am in admiration of the fighting spirit of the Ukrainian people against the Russian invasion, and the military might that they have thwarted for 2.5 years. The Zelensky fella, is that his name, Ray?
Yeah, that's him. Yeah.
Okay, again, he may be stealing us blind. I don't know. That's I mean,
Right.
you hear these
Right.
stories and everything
Right.
I understand. I'm just saying that guy I admire him for being able just to stand up to Putin and the massive disadvantage he was at. Again, I don't want to get into arguments with people about, what the reasons why most conservatives disagree with helping the Ukrainians. But do you understand what I'm saying, Ray?
Oh, 100%.
Okay.
Look, this isn't really about Zelensky.
Right.
The ethics of what he has done, that's for other people to decide. But the Ukrainians have fought harder and longer and shed far more blood in this war than anybody thought possible. Tim, I will say this. I'm sure Mr. Putin now knows he miscalculated. I think he thought it would be a cakewalk or a week-long battle or a 2-week-long battle.
The Russians have lost how many people? Like, I don't know. I don't know. I'd have to look it up. Tens and tens and tens of thousands.
Oh, yeah, more than that.
Of troops.
Hundreds of thousands. Yeah.
So that land, that Ukrainian land over there on the east side of Ukraine is just littered with dead bodies, right?
Yeah.
I say littered with. That's
well, and that's part of Mr. Putin's calculus in all of this. He is willing to do what a lot of other people wouldn't do. He is willing to sacrifice his own soldiers to prosecute the war against Ukraine.
Up to 500 estimated casualties during the Russian.
500 what?
500,000. 500,000.
That's what I'm saying. You walk every 6 steps over there in eastern Ukraine, you're going to run across a dead body.
Right.
Now that's what that looks like with 500,000. We the United States lost 400,000, I think, in World War II total.
Yeah.
Total.
How many on the Ukrainian side is there? Can you guys find out the number of estimated? I don't know.
Ukrainian deaths in
that is Ukrainian. Ukraine war casualties near 500,000, according to U.S. officials. This was as of August 18th.
Oh, we misunderstood. I thought you were talking about the Russian army.
Is there an estimate on the Russian side?
500,000 Ukrainians have died?
This is from the State Department.
U.S. State
This is a
Department.
Congress.gov document. Troop deaths and injuries in Ukraine war near 500,000. U.S. officials say Ukraine and Russia have lost a staggering number of troops, and Kyiv's counteroffensive drags on. This is, again, 2023. Total number of Ukrainian and Russian troops killed or wounded since the war began 18 months ago is nearly, Ukrainian and Russian, it says 500,000.
The war itself between both countries on both sides
Total.
combined, there's been
I got you.
Yeah.
Russia, 300,000, and then it would be about 200,000, 170 to 180,000.
Well, no doubt Putin felt threatened by, what was going on in Ukraine. Ukraine provoked some of this, I think, with some of their, don't you think so, Ray?
Sure.
Ukraine provoked some of this with their actions, and And Putin was also a very paranoid guy. And so he could give you solid reasons why he went to war with Ukraine. But it's just tragic and sad, the loss of life on both sides, and where this goes after the presidential election, I don't know.
Sure. Just for complete clarification, what we mentioned just a while ago as far as numbers go, between the war and total, there's been 500,000, if you combine both sides, of casualties as a result of the war itself. But think about that for itself for just a moment. 500,000 people
dead.
And
not to mention the destruction of houses, homes, infrastructure.
Businesses, obviously.
Yeah. Have you talked to anybody in Kyiv, Ray, at all since the war?
I have talked to people who have talked to the folks in Kyiv, and the destruction, the death. You know, that 500,000, we're talking soldiers there. We're not talking civilian casualties, which is always a much greater figure. I would say among people I know, because I want to clarify this, among people I know and the folks that we've worked with over there, the anger they feel toward the Russian army is there's almost no limit.
It's generational.
Yeah, it's generational.
The hatred that especially the Ukrainians will have for Putin and Russia will go on generationally.
Yeah.
That's just the reality of it. But I just wondered, what provoked me to bring this topic up was just reading Putin's comments. Just he's sounding more like, that he completely and totally is blaming the West, i.e. the United States, Great Britain, Germany, for this going on and on and on because the West has been funding Ukraine. Otherwise, he would have swallowed up Ukraine pretty easily.
I don't know pretty easily, Tim, but his basic point is right. If America
had not funded Ukraine, this war would have been over.
That's right.
But they would have taken over Ukraine. Ukraine would have become Russia.
Right.
Yes.
Right. Back like in the days of the USSR.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, you're listening to Today's Issues on American Family Radio. Next story, Steve.
All right, let's take a look. We kind of looking at the history of Tim Walz and what he's done in Minnesota. And I came across some video, which we have the audio from, of the National Guard in Minneapolis. Now, there's a little confusion on my part because it wasn't very clear whether this is the National Guard, whether it came as a result, this was happening because of COVID, and they did deploy National Guard troops during COVID. That's the general thought I have from the comments that accompany this audio on my Twitter feed. But they also deployed troops during the George Floyd riots. There was a curfew put in place, and you're going to hear the National Guard warning people to get off their front porch. The video has these people are on their own front porch wearing masks, and the National Guard says light them up, and then they are shot with paint guns. So take a listen to the cut.
What does this have to do with?
Tim Walz mobilized the National Guard in Minneapolis to fight COVID and the Floyd riots.
So he's responsible for this? What we're about to hear?
I don't know if he personally did the rules of engagement, but yes.
That seems like what we're inferring.
Well,
by running this story.
What this happened under his watch. He was one of the worst COVID lockdown governors.
Okay.
I don't know that he.
I just want to put some context in here. If we're going to play something.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a fair. And there's some things I don't know about this. What I do know is it's a legitimate video of the National Guard taking people off their own front porch in Minneapolis by troops that were deployed by Walz.
For the COVID.
Every video, everybody that posted this says it was because of COVID.
Gotcha.
So let's listen to cut 10, then we can talk about it.
And if you pay attention, you'll hear the police say, get in the house. You'll hear several commands, and then you'll hear light them up. And then that's when you get the fire. We'll play it again.
You know, this is...
Get in your house now! Let's go! Light him up! Go inside now! Get in the house!
Get in, get in, get in, get in, get in, get in. Get in.
And if you pay attention, you'll hear the police say.
That's awful, what I'm hearing there. You're saying that's the Minnesota National Guard during COVID. Was anybody ever... Somebody got that on video. Is anybody ever held to account for this? Do you know?
Not that I know. It's just coming out now. It's just coming out now because of the his appointment. So as his nomination.
Were there housebound rules in Minnesota?
Yes.
Stay in your house.
There was a curfew that was put on.
I think we forget those days because in Mississippi.
We didn't have that in Mississippi.
Well, no, because I refused to participate in it. But there
were. We didn't have an order. I don't remember any states that had stay-at-home orders. Do you, Ray?
What about California? I don't know.
No, there were. It was way worse than we care to remember. Now, again, we live in Mississippi, so it may have.
Yeah.
But there you were told not to go to church. If you went to church, you got.
Well, they told churches don't open, but they didn't say you can't leave your house, and you can't go outside on your front porch like this guy. That lunatic you hear screaming at those people, get in.
Gavin Newsom had some fun with this. We'll go back and we don't have it in front of us. We can do some digging. That may be a fun day. Just go.
So
back
what's the point of airing that, Steve?
Well, he's a people have accused him of being a socialist, a communist type of authoritarian, and
is that his fault? What we heard?
Well, it's under his watch, and I would have to think that he imposed the curfew. So did
the governor was in all the states responsible for the COVID restrictions, which is why I thought it worked out. We saw visibly during the COVID lockdowns that the red states got turned back to more.
All right.
Let me just caveat this also is that in my mind, I'm thinking it could have also been the George Floyd riot times because the guard was deployed in both. And
you would have had a curfew then because people were burning down the city and all kind of things.
But I still wouldn't think that they would shoot them off at their own porch.
What's your funny story over there? We got a minute to
go.
I
do, don't I?
Yeah.
Sorry about that. I didn't know. We have a food service worker in Chicago that was stealing some COVID funds. Stole $1.5 million worth of chicken wings from her school. She's a school lunch lady that stole $1.5 million worth of chicken wings.
Where'd you put them?
That's what I was going to ask.
I know. That's.
You can put chicken wings in your pocket.
I can put them away, but even that's a little bit much.
How much did she steal?
$1.5 million in chicken wings.
Well, let's say
that's a lot of chicken wings.
Let's say you really.
Are you serious, Clark?
Yeah.
Where are you reading this?
Vera Liddell, 68, was working for Harvey School District 152 when she placed orders for the chicken wings with a food provider for the district. Billed the district while she kept the food.
I think she didn't get caught because she bought others off by giving them free chicken
wings.
Chicken wings. Do you know what I'm saying?
Right.
Kind of like crack. For some people, that's like crack cocaine.
Yeah,
maybe.
What's your name?
Maybe
Liddell.
It was a DoorDash order.
First question is
Vera Liddell.
Over what period of time?
Yeah. She had it going on.
One really big order.
Yeah.
Really
July
huge.
2020 to February 2022.
No, it was a racket she had going on there. Working and you thought she was an innocent kitchen lady.
Right.
Kitchen school lady. No, that's by day. By night, she's a chicken wing
thief.
All right. Have a great day, everybody. We'll see you back here tomorrow.